I'm currently in the process of testing some different cross-country bikes. And so I thought it'd be fun to make a video of this to kind of document what my findings are. And the reason I wanted to do this is because there's a lot of information out there about different ride characteristics of a 29er, how it compares to a 26er. You know, which one rides better around a bank turn, or which one rides better downhill or uphill. But at the end of the day, for me, it's which bike is faster on a cross-country lap. And so I've got a cross-country loop that I've been testing bikes on for about 5 years. So I've got some pretty good data to compare bikes. And this loop takes about 14.5 to 15 minutes to complete. And it's at a trail that's very similar to the racing that we have in Florida here. And it's got a lot of climbs, got some places where you can open it up, a lot of routes that we have in Florida. Really tight and twisty in some sections. So it's a pretty good cross-section of the type of trails that we race here in Florida. So I'm going to be testing 4 different bikes. I currently own a giant Anthem X29er, and I love the bike. I've had it for probably about 5 months. But you know, you always ask yourself, is this the fastest bike for me? And so I'm also going to test a 2008 Giant Anthem. This is a bike that I used to own that I sold to a friend who's going to let me borrow it for the test. And also I'm going to borrow 2 Niners from my local bike shop. I've got a Niner Jet 9 and I've got a Niner Air 9. Both of these bikes are spec'd very similarly to my Giant Anthem X29er, so it's going to be a really good comparison. And in just a minute here, I'm going to show you the weights of some of the bikes, some other ones I've got to get in over the next couple days, and I'll show you some specs of the bikes. So we'll see how it goes. So this is the 2008 Giant Anthem, and this is stock with the exception of a different tire on the rear. Now the caveat with this bike is it does not have a set of race wheels, and this bike is somewhere around 27 pounds, so it's about 2 pounds heavier than the 29er. So, you know, I might have to kind of put an asterisk by the time and maybe deduct 15-20 seconds for the fact that this bike is not set up with race wheels. But overall, it's a fast bike. It's got a 72-degree head angle, and it's a pretty fast little 26er. I put in some pretty good times on this a couple years ago when it was mine. So we'll see how this does against the 29er. So this is my current race bike. It's a Giant Anthem X29er. It's got a 1x10 drivetrain on it. It's got a Fox RP23 shock, Fox 29er fork, and the whole bike weighs just a hair under 25 pounds. It's got the i9 wheel set with the Stan ZTR Crest rims and Maxxis Aspen tires. And finally, we have a Niner Jet 9, and this bike is 26.2 pounds the way it's set up. It's got Stan's wheels with the 355 rims, and it has EXO components set up as a 2x10 drivetrain. It's got a carbon bar on it and RockShox Reba fork. So my first test ride in this series of tests was on the Giant Anthem 26er, and my time was 15 minutes and 7 seconds. Now, I told you before that I've been doing this test for about 5 or 6 years on different bikes, and that time is, you know, not too slow, but nowhere near some of the times that I put on my full suspension 29ers. My record time was about 14 minutes and 15 seconds. You know, still a fast time is 14.5 minutes. So when I rode the bike, I gave it all I had. I didn't hold back and try to ride a 26er like I would a 29er, you know, where I felt like the bike was going to be faster in certain sections. I nailed it. But in Florida, we have a lot of routes, and I think that's what it comes down to, is the 29ers will just go over every single route just a hair faster than a 26er. It just maintains the momentum. The argument would be that because the trails are so tight here, that the 26er should get around them faster. Which, when you go just the the really tight, the left, right, left stuff, the 26er does feel more agile, but the 29er still gets really good traction, and you may have to use a little bit more body English or change your riding style a little bit with the 29er. But I really feel now that the 29ers are going to be faster here in Florida, because the time was quite a bit slower. I'd say probably 45 seconds, 45 seconds slower on the 26er than I probably would have been on the 29er. I felt good. Didn't feel like I was having a bad day. So now I'm going to be focusing on the 29ers to see which one's faster between the three 29ers that I have. Well, I'm back out here at the trails and getting ready to test the Jet 9, but before I tested the Jet 9, I wanted to ride the 26er one more time. I got the wheels off of my wife's bike with a little coaxing, because they're set up tubeless with cross-mark tires. They're not extremely light wheels, but the tires are going to be a lot lighter. So before I completely ride off 26ers, I wanted to do one more time trial on this. So I'm going to do that, kind of rest a little bit, come back, get the Jet 9, get used to that a little bit, and then take the Jet 9 out and do the time trial test on that. So see how it goes. So today I rode the Anthem 26er and the Jet 9 back to back. I did my lap on the Anthem, went back to the parking lot, kind of rode easy, recovered, and then went back out in the Jet 9. And my time on the Jet 9 was 44 seconds faster than the Anthem 26. So I wanted to do one more test with the 26 just to make sure, because it's a big decision. You want to make sure you're on the right bike. So for the courses that I ride and courses that I race on, I'm fully convinced now that a 29er is faster. The 26er, you feel like you're down inside the trail but on top of the bike, whereas the 29er, you feel like you're more inside the bike but on top of the trail. When I jumped back on the 29er, I had been on the 26er for a couple days. When I got back on the 29er, I just felt like I was floating on top of the trail, and the best way I can describe it is you almost feel like someone's pushing you a little bit because of the momentum you're carrying on the trail. On the 26er, on my laps, I would hit a section of roots and I felt like my momentum was just zapped, like really quick. Whereas the 29er, I just felt like I kept going over it. So definitely 29ers are faster. Now what I'm going to do is kind of decide between the Anthem X 29 and the Jet 9, which one is faster. The Jet 9, I really felt like it was more snappy handling than the Anthem X, but I need to ride them back to back. So in a couple days, I'm going to go out and test both of those two bikes back to back and kind of get an idea of which one's faster. Once I decide on that, then we're going to go and test ride a Niner Air 9 demo bike, and decide which one's going to be faster, full suspension 29er or hardtail 29er. Alright, tomorrow morning I'm going to get up early and go test the Jet 9 and the Anthem X. This test is really, I was kind of comparing 29 versus 26. Now that I've ruled out the 26, it's really coming down to Anthem X or Jet 9. I would have to put in a heck of a lap on the hardtail 29 or the Niner Air 9 that I'm going to borrow later on this week to really lean towards a hardtail. I don't think that's going to happen based on other things that I've done. So where it's going now is the Anthem X versus the Niner Jet 9. So I'm going to show you the things that I'm looking at, on paper, the geometry differences and the weight. And again, the Jet 9's heavier, the Anthem is not as snappy in the handling. So which one of those weigh more into a faster lap. That's what I'm going to find out. Let me show you the weights and some measurements that I've done. The Jet 9 is coming in at 26.48. The builds on both of these bikes are extremely similar. The main difference is the 2x10 drivetrain on the Jet 9 and the 1x10 on the Anthem X. Other than that, the wheel set, the handlebars, the brakes are all extremely similar. And so the Anthem X is coming in at 24.78. So about 1.5 pounds lighter than the Jet 9. Now the Anthem is a medium, so is the Jet 9. I would ride a small Niner because the Niners run a little bit bigger, their top tubes are a little bit longer, and so even though I'm testing a medium, I really would be on a small, which is going to make for even a shorter wheelbase and a little bit lighter bike. So the Anthem at 24.78. Now let me show you some geometry differences on the two. Okay, I'm going to measure the chain stays. I know this isn't probably the way a bike company would measure the chain stays, but this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to go from the center of the cranks to the rear axle. So again, this is just the way I'm doing it. I don't know if this is exactly how a bike company would do it, but we're looking at 45.5 centimeters or 450 millimeters for the Niner. Okay, now we're going to measure the Anthem in the exact same way. Middle of the crank to the rear axle. And we're about 46.5 or 460 millimeters for the Anthem. So about a 10 millimeter difference in the chain stays, and I think that's why this bike does not feel as agile as the Jet 9. And the Anthem X does, it feels more stable, but the trails that I ride are really tight, back and forth. And I've also noticed that the Jet 9 is a lot easier to manual. I mean, it almost feels like a 26er because of the way that Niner does the linkages on the suspension, which I'll give a close-up here in a minute. I'm going to measure the whole wheelbase now. And again, this is not scientific, it's just the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to go from the front axle to the rear axle. And so on the Anthem, on this medium, I've got 113 centimeters. So 113 centimeters for my measure of the wheelbase. Now let's look at the Jet 9. Alright, so the Jet 9, again, from the front axle to the rear axle, about 110.5 centimeters. So that's about 2.5 centimeters shorter than the Anthem X. And again, both of these are mediums. I think maybe a little bit better comparison is the small Jet 9, because the Niners do run a little bit bigger than Giant in their sizing. And again, I always go by the top tube when I measure what bike's good for me. This video ended up being a little bit longer than what I had planned, so to fit it on YouTube I got to break it up into 2 parts. So this is the conclusion of part 1. Look for part 2, which is going to be the same name, just part 2.